used Mimikatz as a proper tool to get some information out. So I am thrilled to learn more about this handy utility that we'd like to call Mimikatz. Let's give Dusty a big round of applause.
Okay, Mimikatz. A quick show of hands. Who's familiar with Mimikatz? Just get an idea of where you guys are at. Who's used it before? And who can like pass a ticket like it's nobody's business? Help you, awesome. All right, cool. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about Mimikatz. We'll talk about some of the functionality. We're not going to get through all of it. There's a ton of stuff to unpack in Mimikatz. It's been under active development since like 2007, so it's 11 years old. You can't do math, and it's there's just a lot of cool stuff it's going to do. So we'll go through some of the basics. We're going to talk a little about the defensive side of what you can do to detect Mimikatz, and even some prevention, hopefully. And we'll leave the rest up to you. If you're interested enough, there should be some resources where you can go and dig a little deeper. So Mimikatz is the brainchild of Benjamin Delby, who decided he wanted to learn C and thought he'd make like one of the most badass red team tools, pen test tools, etc. As is like Hello World. So he's been working on it. Vincent Latou is also another contributor. They both are French, so I've probably butchered both of their names. So apologies to them when they don't watch this. And yeah, cool. So Mimikatz, a lot of times when you talk about pen testing tools, people are under the impression that things are like proof of concept, or it's a cute tool that a pen tester uses, but you're not going to actually see it on your network. With Mimikatz, if that's what you think, you're wrong. The MITRE ATT&CK framework outlines different groups of adversaries who've been seen using Mimikatz. As a point of reference, APT-1, which is probably hard for you to see, APT-1 is associated with People's Liberation Army, which is part of the Chinese government. APT-28 and 29, who you may be familiar with, Cozy Bear and Fancy Bear, both obviously connected to the Russian government and DNC hacks, have been seen using Mimikatz. APT-32 is a Vietnamese group that targets private industry, and APT-34 is an Iranian cyber espionage group that also targets private industry. So if you are a member of private industry, if you're a government group, if you're associated with politics, it's very likely you could see Mimikatz on your network in use today. Florian Roth, who's also a pretty well-known security expert, or however you want to say it, has seen nation-state groups actually using Mimikatz with a precompiled tool. So jump onto GitHub, just download the zip and start going. So there's not even an attempt by some of these groups, and some of these groups that we call advanced or nation-state level, to hide the fact that they're using Mimikatz. They're using default versions, the same stuff we're going to talk about today, the same stuff you can grab and download and run in your networks. If you want to learn more about Mimikatz, expand on what we're talking about today, there is a wiki on the GitHub page. If you can figure out how to get to GitHub, there's a link for a wiki, and you can jump in and read about all the modules and functions that we're going to talk about today, and several others that we won't. You can also check out Gentle Kiwi, which is Benjamin Delby's handle. You can check out his Twitter feed. He's constantly posting screenshots of things you can do with Mimikatz, things that are not as well known, things that people maybe haven't heard about yet. You'll find that if you jump into the wiki, there's some things that aren't documented there. He's kind of documenting some of those things that way and through some of the talks that he's done. So he's also got some slides floating around. Another really good resource is adsecurity.org if you haven't been there. It's Sean Metcalf's site. The URL's at the top. He's got an unofficial guide to Mimikatz where he consistently updates and documents a lot of the different functionality and how to actually use it. So it's a good resource. If after the talk tonight you decide that this is something you want to play with and you can't quite remember how something works, or you want to look further into some different functionality. So let's jump right in. Secure LSA is a module we're going to look at first. We'll use that for a lot of things. It's used for a lot of the most popular things that Mimikatz does. It requires admin or system privileges. So for most of what you're going to do with it, it's require admin or system privileges, because you're going to jump into the memory for the LSAS process, which it does a lot of important things in Windows, including authentication, storing session information, stores pins for your smart cards. If you use smart cards for login, the pin will actually be stored there. There's a lot of interesting artifacts if you're an attacker or if you're doing forensics that that you'll find inside that process. So you need to be elevated, and we're going to talk about a little bit how to get there if you don't know how. So if you don't have local admin privileges on your workstations at work, and I'd venture a guess that a lot of people do, probably a lot more people than they want to admit, a couple of suggestions. We won't go into privilege escalation. If you want to run as admin, there's a PowerShell script called PowerUp you can use. It'll do a lot of the work for you. Look for common configuration issues that will allow privilege escalation. There's also a tool that's been talked about, I think it's probably been 3 years, someone talked about, called Windows Exploit Suggester, which will look for missing patches that allow privilege escalation. And if you want to run a system, then you can use psexec and just pass it the S flag. That'll open a local command prompt as system. You can also add a computer, like a target host into that. So after the S flag, you do // host name or IP address, and it'll open a remote. It'll open a remote session with a local command prompt that you can run a system remotely there. So to start out, we're going to go to GitHub. We're going to jump into the releases and download the maybe trunk zip file, the same one that we'd seen earlier, or we talked about earlier, what the nation state level attackers have used. This is the precompiled version. And if you do it, you're going to find out Chrome doesn't think you're an adult. You can't decide what you want to download, so they're going to block it for you. If you just save you like a minute of Googling, if you jump into settings and search for protected, there's a setting you can just toggle that off, and Chrome will stop treating you like a child. So now that we have the executable, we're going to unzip it. We're going to navigate to it with an admin command prompt. And once we get there, these are the commands we're going to run. We're going to run mimikatz.exe. Just running that alone is going to give us an interactive prompt or interactive session with Mimikatz. We're going to call first the privilege module and get debug privileges, and that's going to give us the rights that we need to read from the LSASS process. Then we're going to call the secure LSA module, and follow 2 colons. We'll use the logon passwords function. So in just a second, that's all going to happen up here, but it's going to happen fast enough. I won't John Madden it for you. If you see an error message after privilege debug, it means you're probably not running as admin. Just a heads up. Once you do that, you're going to select this crazy wall of text, and I'm going to scroll up through all of it. You get to the top and start working your way down. You can actually log this to a log file, and you can find that in the wiki how to do that. But here I found for the SecKC user on my win domain, it's an Active Directory domain. I've got NTLM and SHA-1 hashes for that user now. We'll talk about what we can do with hash in a little bit, but the problem is we want to dump plain text passwords, where that's kind of the thing Mimikatz is most well known for, and we're going to see that we don't have the ability to see those right now. They're null. So what's going on? Well, Mimikatz has spurred some changes in Windows, and since Windows 8.1 and Server 2012, by default, Windows doesn't log or store your plain text password in memory anymore. And after people kind of whined about it, with Windows 7, they wouldn't have backported it with this KB. Now, if you've installed this KB on your Windows machine, you might find that you're still storing on your Windows 7 machine. You might find you're still storing plain text passwords. The reason that you're still storing them is because there's also a registry setting that has to be set. Now, since we're in attacker mode here, we want to fix this. So we're just going to jump into the registry, and we're going to navigate to this key. In Windows 8.1, 2012, 2016, 2010, etc. This key probably, or this value doesn't exist, probably this D-word value, use logon credential. So we're just going to create it and set it to 1. Now, if you're on the defensive side, you want to stop this. If you want to stop storing the plain text creds in memory, you'll set it to 0. So once we do that, we're going to jump back in. And you'll need to log off and log back in for this to take effect. Or at least that's been my experience. If someone wants to contradict me. So again, we get all kinds of crazy output. Scroll back to the top and we'll jump back down. And this time, again, we have our SecKC user, we've got hashes, and we've got a password.
Woo! Got him!
Hacked. Okay, so what have we learned? If we're looking at defense, what have we learned? We need to be monitoring registry settings. Okay, we need to, if you're not doing that, you need to be doing, there's a ton of persistence methods, there's some privilege escalation methods that rely on changing registry settings and doing evil things with them. So if you're not currently doing that in your network, we'll talk a little bit about how you can monitor that for free in a few minutes, but it needs to be something you're doing. If you want to get a larger list than just a couple of registry settings we'll talk about tonight, the MITRE attack framework is a really good start for finding out all kinds of different registry settings you should be monitoring. You want to go ahead and monitor those, you want to set those with GPO. Don't just run a PowerShell script across your network and think you're done, because it's, as you see, it's easy to change, and once you've changed it, it doesn't get changed back if you're not using GPOs to set it. So the question now, besides just maybe looking for registry changes, what else do we see when it's left behind? This is kind of the blue team portion of the talk. Sysmon, when we run with just the regular precompiled entries, you'll see all the image metadata is preserved, and Delphi has been kind enough, Kiwi's been kind enough to sign the application for us, and we'll see that all the metadata, like product Mimikatz, for example, Mimikatz for Windows, is all getting logged. So those are all pretty easy indicators that some lazy attacker has been running this stuff on your network. So we talked about registry settings. The free way to monitor those with Sysmon is to set it up to log for registry changes and for registry key deletions and alterations. And one of those places we can look is event 12. When we created that use logon credential value, it created a log. So we can actually look for a target object being created with that path to that registry value and an alert on that. If you're afraid of setting up Sysmon on your network because you think it's going to just blow your log handler away, you can actually target individual logs like this. You can have it just log if the target object matches this value. So you could just get a log when this thing occurs and not get hundreds of thousands of logs from your endpoint. You can really tune it down. And some of these things, the Swift-on security syslog configuration, which is running in default in the lab I was using, did not detect. I had to enable some other things. So just a heads up, if you're running that, you may not be covered. It's a good idea to test. So another event is event ID 13, and that's where we'll see the D-word value changing for that. It's being set to 1. That's the indicator that someone's doing something naughty. Additionally, Cyber War Dog, who's another really awesome blue team threat hunter kind of person, had done a nice write-up on identifying Mimikatz being run in memory. And one of the things they talk about looking at is granted access values. So you can see here, if you're able to, that the granted access is 1010 of the target image of LSAS. So we're seeing that something's requesting permissions on LSAS, and that's the specific permissions they're requesting. With process-specific access rights, the reason that's getting logged, what that means is that there's individual permissions processes can request, and these are the processes specifically that Mimikatz is requesting in the top and bottom values. And the way that it works is that each of these different sets of permissions has a numeric value, and it works really similar to how Chmod works in Linux, where you have values that you can add together, and the sum that you end up with is going to uniquely be a certain set of values being requested. So with that, there's two sets of granted access values that are pretty well documented that you'll find. One is 1010, the other is 1410. It depends on whether you're using a newer or older version of Mimikatz. I've seen somebody say they have also seen 14.3a, but it doesn't really match up with the access permissions that Windows documents, so I'm not really sure why that's sitting up there. But I thought I'd mention it. Always your target image is going to be LSAS, and you're going to have a call trace that's going to be kernel-based, and ntdll.dll, or if shellcode's used, the same person who documented the other funky granted access value, it's going to be unknown. Additionally, outside of the granted access values, event ID 7 is going to show you when one image is loading another. So what happens is Mimikatz is going to load us a set of specific DLLs that are kind of unique to it when they're all put together. There's a bunch of DLLs that it loads, but there's 5 that Cyber War Dog's identified that it uniquely kind of loads in a pretty large environment. And again, you might have to tune this and test it in your environment. But if you see these 5 DLLs loaded by a single image in your environment, there's a good chance that what's being run is probably Mimikatz. It's at least worth investigating. So that's another SIM rule you can kind of set up to identify Mimikatz being run in your environment. Okay, some other things we have to worry about. We've talked about the registry key that we need to change to use logon credentials. What about antivirus? Pesky antivirus. So this isn't going to be about antivirus evasion, but there's a couple things that I've done or that you can do that are kind of easy wins with antivirus if you don't just want to create an exclusion and turn it off on the machine you're testing on. Some antivirus vendors will just create exclusions automatically in specific directories like semantic adds them for Exchange servers. So if you know where they're creating those exclusions, you can just drop your files there and antivirus will never scan them. In case you don't know where they are, you don't want to read the documents, some antivirus vendors, picking on semantic again, will actually document it for you in the registry. So it's plain text, you can just navigate to it and read. You can see the folder exclusions, you can see file exclusions if people are excluded by file name, which I suggest you do neither, ever. You can exclude by hash and make life a little bit harder, preferably not MD5. But these two hashes, for example, will give you a list of what file names are not going to be scanned. So just rename Mimikatz and you can run it that way. Last year, sacred cow tipping with Black Hills InfoSec, Carrie Roberts documented that she just did some find and replace on strings. Like she changed Mimikatz to Mimi Dogs and got rid of a couple function names, like just find and replace them with set scripts, and ended up bypassing every antivirus in VirusTotal. So another option if you want to play around with it. You can also just change file formats and see if antivirus is going to identify JavaScript being run. Since Mimikatz is a .NET project, you can compile it as JavaScript using the project at the bottom, which is called .NET to JScript. So you can compile it as JavaScript and run it with like cscript. So open a command prompt as admin, cscript.exe, call the JavaScript file, and it'll be a fully compiled version of Mimikatz as JavaScript. There are a couple versions of that floating around right now, and what I found is that a lot of them are not running the newest Mimikatz, and so some functionality is broken, so you may have to roll your own if you go that route. Another option is not to write Mimikatz to disk at all. Don't worry about antivirus at all. All we need is memory of the LSASS process. So what we can do is we can do a minidump using Task Manager. If you have GUI access, open Task Manager, scroll down to lsas.exe, right click, create a minidump, and when you do, it'll write out to the local temp directory, and you can just exfiltrate that off the system however you want to move it off, and you'll be able to use Mimikatz on your own system, where you don't have to worry about what antivirus is installed and what logs are being sent to the SIM, and you can do things safely that way. If you don't have GUI access, or if you want to do something programmatic, you can use procdump from sysinternals and do the same thing. And with that, it's really nice because you can script it. So a nice feature with Windows event logs is you can have it create or run a process or script when a certain event happens. So you can look for a certain person or user logging into a machine, and when that happens, run your proc dump. You'll know that you have a dump that includes their credentials. And if you want to be really sneaky, then you can trigger an AV alert when you have that set. So you get whoever's doing triage logging into the computer and giving you their creds unwittingly. So once we have that dump, if we're going to go this route, we want to see what we're going to need to do to dump it. And this is what we need to do. We're going to run Mimikatz again on our own machine. We need to run as admin or system again, but this time we need to make sure that the version of Windows we're running on our machine matches the version of Windows that was run on the victim machine, that was running on the victim's machine. You can get free trial versions of Windows from Microsoft if you look hard enough, so it shouldn't be a problem to do that. So we're going to run Mimikatz, secure LSA, minidump, then you'll get a path to your dump file, hit enter, and then again, you'll just run secure LSA, log on passwords, and profit. And this is what it looks like. Okay. Once again, plain text passwords. Okay. Okay, another option, if you do want to run it on the disk, you want to save a file to the disk, is you can use PowerShell. PowerShell's your friend. Now PowerShell's kind of becoming a little bit old hat. It's been really popular for a long time now. Microsoft has done a lot to log more of what PowerShell's doing, and there's endpoint products that can keep you from running PowerShell or make life really hard if you want to. But we're going to do it anyway. There's a script called invoke Mimikatz. That's what we want to use. Don't run it if you're doing this in your network. Don't run it straight off of GitHub. Run it from somewhere you trust. All right. A note on this: I'm using the one we get in the Empire project here. There's also a project called PowerSploit, and theirs seems to be out of date. Functionality is not quite working on the latest Windows 10, but Empire seems to be working pretty well. And I'm guessing it's probably being updated more frequently. With that link, with that file we're going to download, we're going to use an IEX download cradle. IEX is just short for invoke expression. What we're going to do is use .NET within PowerShell to download the contents of that file into memory, where we're going to execute it there. So you should never write a file to disk if you're doing this. Also, just note the fact that we're using HTTPS. I think you can go both ways with GitHub potentially. Some antivirus products that have an IDS don't always inspect SSL. So even though they might flag this and alert, if you try to download it in clear text, switching to SSL will solve some problems. So put them both together. It looks like this big blob of text. Now that I just read the command or wrote the command into the variable m and ran it, which makes life a little bit easier with quotes and things. And here's what it looks like. I copy pasted that. I'm not that fast a typer. So it's going to take a minute to download. I should have cut this out. Hacked. At the top. And once again, SecKC user really sucks at doing their password everywhere. Okay, another option. So we've done plain text creds, right? We've done clearly stored text in memory. Let's move on to a different kind of attack. This one's kind of fun. It's a persistence method. Windows allows you to write security support providers that you can plug into LSASS, like ones that are kind of being used in TLM, Kerberos, etc. You can plug those in and load them, and they'll let you do some kind of fun authentication-y things. And Mimikatz was cool enough to write one that will just let you log passwords that are used to a text file. And that's what we're going to do. So there's two things you need to do. Once again, we're going to change the registry setting. There's a key up there. I'm not going to read it to you. Security packages. You're going to add the name of a DLL that's included in Mimikatz, mimilib. And then we're going to drop that DLL into System32, which is the same location that LSASS is living on your Windows machine. Once we do that, we're going to have to reboot the machine. That'll help us load the DLL. And when we do, we end up with this. So you can see I'm in System32. Kiwi SSP is the text file that was written to. And here I've got passwords both for a local user, Vagrant, and a SecKC user. So once again, we're able to find clear text creds. And the nice thing about this is, once again, you can coax someone into logging on if you don't think they're going to log on by, visit a site that's going to get blocked or trigger an AV alert. You can use an ICAR string if you just want to make sure they know they're going to show up. And there's another method of doing this also called MimSSP, and Mimikatz will actually patch memory of LSASS in real time. You don't have to reboot, you don't have to log out or do anything. It'll start writing this text file for you. And what I found is with the latest version of Mimikatz, it forces a reboot. I think things don't go well, so there's probably a bug. So if you're going to do this on a production system and you're going to use MimSSP because you thought, hey, this is a lot easier than rebooting a server, I would advise against it until you've tested it and know that it's going to be fixed. All right, so we've talked about a couple of ways to get clear text creds. But now we're not going to need passwords anymore. We're going to move into the land of passing the hash and passing the ticket. Those NTLM hashes we saw before, we're going to figure out what we're going to do with them now. With pass the ticket, we haven't seen the Kerberos tickets yet. There's a different module that's going to do that, but we're going to show you how to export Kerberos tickets so that we can reuse other people's Kerberos tickets in our session. Also, as a side note, if you're laughing at Windows right now because Mimikatz makes it look pretty silly with their single sign-on, Linux, these attacks also work on Linux. not with Mimikatz specifically, but Benjamin Delpy, Gentle Kiwi, has released a tool called Kekeo, K-E-K-E-O, which will allow you to convert Kerberos tickets from Windows to be able to use them in Linux and vice versa. And he's also, if you check out his Twitter, he's got a little image showing you how to extract those tickets or save those tickets off into files on Linux that you can use this way. All right, so right into it, pass the hash. Again, we'll call Mimikatz, we're gonna debug privileges, we're gonna dump logon passwords because we wanna see the NTLM hash. Once we have it, we're gonna call the secure LSA module again. And this time we'll use the pth pass the hash function, and we're gonna have to define the user that we wanna use, and the domain, and the NTLM hash, and a command we wanna run. So in this case, I'm gonna run psexec, I believe against a domain controller from a regular Windows 10 machine, because I'm gonna find a domain admin credential, and I'm gonna have an interactive system session with a domain controller. We'll look at it now. Scroll back to the top, looking at the creds. Here's SecKC admin hacked. Oh wait, no clear text creds. That's okay. We have an NTLM hash, so we're gonna copy that thing. Eventually, I'll find the bottom again, and we're gonna pass the hash here. Secure LSA, pth user SecKC admin. Domains win domain. You use your domain name for this, not win domain. Paste the hash in, and next we're gonna have the command we're gonna run. psexec -s//ip for the domain controller, and CMD. And now we have an interactive shell on the domain controller on a Windows 10 machine. You can see I'm running a system, and the host name is DC, that's a domain controller host. And we'll back out to show you where I was running. So I am SecKC user, that's what I was, and Win10 was the machine. So, hacked. The next feature is pass the ticket. So this one's a lot of fun as well. So we're gonna take a Kerberos ticket out of memory that belongs to a different user, and we're gonna inject it into our session so that we can pretend to be that user. Because single sign-on is awesome. So again, privilege debug. Now we're gonna use the secure LSA tickets export, and that's gonna export all the tickets into the directory we're currently running out of. So if you're gonna do this on you're trying to be sneaky, maybe jump into program data or some directory that's not hidden by default on the user's machine. After we do that, we'll get tickets dumped. We're gonna purge Kerberos tickets that are already existing for our session. We're gonna pass the ticket. We're just gonna point Kerberos ::ptt, which I fat fingered. It should be ::ptt to the ticket file. We'll list it, see it's there, exit, and then we are effectively working as that user. So just to demonstrate it works, PTT is a user account that we're gonna create. It doesn't exist yet. So here, secure LSA, tickets /export. Doing all this crazy output stuff. And here's the directory I was working in. You can see all the Kerberos tickets that were dumped. Some of these are gonna be machine tickets and things that we're not gonna use for this. The one I want is right there. I'm gonna rename it to make it a little bit shorter and easier to read, which isn't really necessary. I'm gonna copy it so I can paste it later because I'm lazy. So again, we're gonna list tickets. We can see there's some tickets already existing for my session, so we're gonna dump those. We're gonna purge them. And you can see they're gone. And now it's time to pass the ticket. Pass to Kerberos PTT, the name of the ticket. Oh yeah, we've listed it, there they are. We exited back to the regular command prompt, and now I'm going to create a user named PTT with a secret password. Don't use my password. And we were successful. So why not make them a member of the domain admins group too while we're at it, right? Why steal the password for the domain admin if you can just create your own? And there we are. Check to see what that user looks like, and oh look, they have domain admin credits. Hacked again, sucker. Cool, so that's kind of a quick rundown of how we can use Mimikatz to pivot around a network, some different options that you've got. But you might be asking at this point, like you said, there's a lot of crap baked into Mimikatz. What else can I do? Well, how about create a golden ticket? Have you guys heard of that? Yep. Woo! Golden ticket means you can like make your own tickets. So if you've got access to a domain controller, you've got admin access, you can create a shadow copy or use some other method to get the NTDS DIT file. That's going to contain hashes for every user on the domain. Once you do that, you can get you want the NTLM hash for the KRB TGT user, which is the person that creates all the tickets. Right? This is like the big boss at the end of the video game, and you can use this crazy string of text to create a golden ticket using that NTLM hash. There's also something called silver tickets. Who's heard? No demos for that. Sorry, guys. Who's heard of silver tickets? Silver tickets are like the ugly stepsister of golden tickets, but they're actually like a lot easier to get because you don't have to have like admin access to the domain controller. You just need you can use a machine hash or service account hash. And where the golden ticket is going to be a TGT ticket to allow you to create your own TGT tickets. Silver tickets will let you create your own TGS tickets. They're a little more limited in use. Obviously, you can't like write your own pass everywhere. Like golden ticket's basically like Zach Morris like making his own hall passes. Skeleton keys. Yeah, Saved by the Bell. I've seen all of them 3 times. Skeleton keys, another cool function. It's not needed as often anymore, but what it'll allow you to do is patch memory of LSAS once again, and it's going to let you log into any account on the network using a single password, which in this case, by default, is Mimikatz. But as long as that machine's not rebooted, you'll have access to any account that haven't dumped credentials or do anything else. You can go where you want to. The user's actual password is totally unaffected, so you don't have to worry about them being locked out or anything else. This currently works. If you have multiple domain controllers in your domain, you're going to have to patch each of those with a skeleton key, or it's only going to work when you're authing against the specific domain controller that you've backdoored. So if you're interested in Mimikatz still, and you want to do some more research, there's a lot of other cool things you can do. You can suspend logging to the event log service without like killing the service. You can also clear event logs once you've done that without having the event log's been cleared log showing up. If you have like a credential manager, you can dump credits from there. You don't have to be admin. So if you're in a user session, you can dump their passwords. You can allow multiple RDP sessions without the CALs that you're supposed to have to do that. If you would like GUI instead of command line access. So there's a whole lot of fun stuff you can do. A lot to read up on. DC Sync and DC Shadow are kind of like the newest hotness. Some fun things you can pretend to be a domain controller basically without actually having to be a domain controller. Other protections, as we're jumping into some other defenses. Protected process light is something that Windows introduced that is meant to keep you from reading and doing nasty things with memory of LSAS, or the processes if you define them. In this case, LSAS. Unless you're also a protected process, which Mimikatz shouldn't be. You can set that by setting the dword run as PPL to 1 on your domain. The problem is, Mimikatz also comes with a signed driver. Again, this is something you can detect. People like install drivers. You should have an alert that's something like Mimikatz. But Mimikatz by default, if you don't detect that driver being loaded, can turn that off. Which is fancy. Credential Guard's another protection that's been put in place. It's basically an isolated virtual environment that separates user space from the place that you're storing your secrets in LSAS. It's pretty cool. Something Windows is doing. There's some limitations that you have to be running like Windows 2010 Windows 10 or 2016. TPM chips preferred for that. And there's some places where it doesn't actually still provide the protection that you want. So there's still, it kind of falls short still. Further reading on the defensive side, if you're interested in how to protect privileged access credentials and users, a handful of topics that you can look at. Windows has done a good job documenting things. Some of them require like newer versions of Windows and take a lot more effort to put in place. So they can make your life a little bit harder. What I would suggest or recommend, or what I'm going to propose, is maybe a little different way to go about protecting your machine. Okay, so we're going to talk about enumerating attack paths. Now, if you've been paying attention for the attacking activity stuff, you're going to see there's a lot of attack paths, right? That's kind of what some of the tools that Ryan's talked about do, is they look for ways to go from wherever you gained a foothold in a network to domain admin or whatever your goal is. So if you pay attention, you kind of have an idea how that works, right? So let's say Joe Derp, his workstation, on the right, on the left, he gets hacked, he gets phished. He's got a reverse shell out to China or wherever else. And once he's in there, your patching machine decides to log in with workstation admin creds to throw some patches in place, patching Firefox or whatever else. Once it does that, because the attacker is already on that machine, they run Mimikatz, and now they are that user, right? If you have admin access to a machine, you are whoever logs into that machine with Mimikatz. Since you have workstation admin, you can log into the domain admin's workstation. And once you're there, run Mimikatz again, and when they use their domain admin creds, you can grab those out of memory, grab the Kerberos ticket, pass the hash, etc. Those other attacks are going to be a little harder. Some of these things are going to be mitigated with newer versions of Windows, but you kind of get the idea. You're looking at ways to go from somewhere that's not that important in your network to something that is. And if you enumerate all of those things in your network and look to eliminate those using like host-based firewalls and a couple of other types of technologies, you'll find that it makes it much harder, even if you have credentials, to do bad things. So the idea, what a challenge to do is, when you look at your network and you look at segregation, etc., assume that your credentials are known to an attacker. So you're not just looking at VLANs and segmenting like the important parts of your network, because when you do that, you kind of create like a Donkey Kong scenario, right? Like you can kind of move laterally until you can move vertically, you kind of move laterally again until you can find the pivot point through the VLAN, and you kind of keep doing that, which is what we've been learning in the attacking activity talks, right? So, a suggestion, don't allow client computers to talk to each other. It's simple, it's easy, it's free. You can use a Windows host-based firewall. Don't allow SMB, don't allow any kind of connections between those machines. If you use a host-based firewall or some other technology that logs it, you're going to see other cool things like port scans, right? If you don't want to overfill your log management, solution, what if just when port 80 is hit on a client machine, you see a deny for port 80, you log that. Or if you see a lot of denies for port 80, or for port 22, or common ports, you can pick a handful, probably 5 or 10, and you would see probably every port scan that happens in your network, because those are the ports that are getting scanned. Additionally, look at your servers that are in place and identify which are ingress servers and which are egress servers. Ingress servers are servers that all of your users are going to access. So like if you have a ticketing system, a lot of people are accessing that, that's an ingress server. If you have a file server that's hosting a ton of file shares, that's an ingress server. The things that users connect to are ingress. Your egress servers are the things that connect to your users. They have a very different functionality. They have to be able to log into your user computers. So they want to be treated differently, okay? And yeah, yes. So put that all together, and we end up with host-based firewall rules that kind of look like this. We don't allow the file share computer to ever log into or connect or make any kind of network connection to our user computers. And we don't allow our users to ever connect to our egress servers, except for in the case of the couple of admins. So a few domain admins or system admins, etc., that need to get to the egress servers are able to log in there. And what that does is it changes your attack surface. So you've got to phish the admin, not just a normal user. Does this all make sense?
Yeah.
Additionally, you have the domain controller piece, and the best way to mitigate that is if you had what Windows calls a privileged access workstation. Take a workstation that no one can connect to, a separate workstation. Don't use a VM because you're still sharing the same hardware, right? A totally separate computer, and use that to manage your domain controllers. If that's the only place you're ever using your domain admin creds, the chances of that machine getting owned are pretty small because there's going to be no reason to browse the web, no reason to use email. There's going to be no reason for something from the outside to end up on that machine unless they have physical access to your facilities. In addition to kind of segmenting your network this way, I recommend that you tier your logons. So the credentials that you would use for tier 2, like your workstations, should not be able to log on to or authenticate to your servers. Outside maybe like you can authenticate to a file share, but you're not going to be able to create an interactive or network log on to your servers or to your domain controllers, and vice versa. The creds that you need to get onto your WSUS server should not work to log into your client machines. Cool. Okay, so this obviously gets a lot more complicated because no one's network has like 6 computers on it. But that's the reason we talk about attack paths is you can continue to enumerate this out. You can create additional levels of credentials, additional tiers of kind of where your computers look like. But the idea is if you don't need to connect to it, don't. If you enumerate your attack paths, this should really start to minimize the number of attack paths that you see, then start closing those off as well. And the idea being that the path to domain admin, there should only be a few nodes that are able to get there, and they should be very close. There shouldn't be a 3-node hop because any of those 3 nodes getting owned means domain admin gets owned. Okay. So this isn't really super well documented anywhere. This is kind of what I've come up with and other people have come up with that we've talked about. I've seen this used. It's not super difficult to use like host-based firewalls in Windows or on Linux. It's something you can push out, and like I said, these couple of rules should be things that you'll need to create some exceptions, but the exceptions should be pretty limited, and it should really change the way your network looks to an attacker. So for my lab, just shout out Chris Long. If anyone doesn't have a Windows lab and you want one, there's this cool project called Detection Lab. It uses Vagrant and Packer and VirtualBox, or if you want to pay some money, you can use it with VMware. And it's basically a pre-built domain you can just throw up, not like puke. You can build it up on your machine. I was able to get it to work in Windows Linux subsystem on my Windows machine. There are scripts to build it automatically in Linux and on OS 10. So if you need a Windows lab, it'll use trial images, but because it's using, it's the whole build is scripted out, you can actually tear it down and re-download images and build it back up overnight and not have to worry about like trials expiring. And then the thing to keep in mind though, there's no domain user setup, so you got to create your own users and deal with some group policy stuff. But not only does it have the domain set up, OS queries already set up on it. Sysmon with Swift on Securities setup is on there. There's a handful of other cool tools. Splunk's already pre-set up. There's a Windows event log forwarder. A whole bunch of stuff where you can not only carry out attacks, but also have a lot of the artifacts that you would need to have to figure out how to mitigate or detect those are just built in. That's it. Questions? Yes?
How does two-factor play into that at all?
How does two-factor play into it? Okay. It depends. If you're two-factoring network access, then really your computer just becomes a pivot point, right? If you're requiring two-factor for like a VPN connection, then once you've connected, no more two factors required. So you just pivot through that machine and you're into the next network. If you're using it for logons, like I said, smart card pins are actually stored in LSASS, so you can find pins for those, and then it kind of depends on what it takes to interact with them. Additionally, with Kerberos sessions, if you've got sessions established, it's something to play with. I think you might find that I would need someone probably, if there's anybody that's actually done this, pass a ticket is maybe possible in those scenarios. I'm not sure. Any other questions? Yes.
You showed changing your registry key to store plain text password memory. Does that work on Windows versions greater than 7 or only on 7?
It does. You have to create the DWORD value on newer Windows versions, but this was all run on Windows 10. So, yeah, you can create that registry value. The DWORD doesn't show up there, but once you create it and set it and log out, log back on, you're good to go. Any other questions? Cool. Thanks.
Well, I learned more during that than almost every webcast I've watched in the last 6 months. So congratulations for that. That was very well put together. Let's give him another round of applause.